And then suddenly I realized, oh my God, look at the time. Okay, we are live, I think. Hello, everyone. Yes, we are live. Hi, everyone. It's Orna Ross here from the Alliance of Independent Authors with Michael Ronn. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Orna. Happy December.
Yes, indeedy. Here we are, end of the year, and we are here, of course, for our member Q&A, where our members send in questions that they would like us to cover in this public forum, so that they can be of help to other members as well. And last member Q&A of the year, and we have a lot of questions to get through, right?
Yes, we do. So it's going to be quite a few, but we'll manage it.
Okay, let's leap on in then. You are the man with the questions.
Yep. So first question comes from Stephen, and he asks, what is the ALLi view on licensing and collecting societies like the ALCS and PLS? They were just kind of curious about it and wanted to know what ALLi's stance was on it.
Yes, absolutely. They are a good thing. Set up by author activists many years ago in most cases. They don't make you rich. It's not a lot of money. It's more recognition of copyright and an acknowledgement that the author does deserve something if a book is borrowed or licensed in a particular way. So yeah, we would say definitely sign yourself up for it. No harm done, and it's a nice little bonus that comes along once a year.
Okay. All right. So next question comes from Jilly, and she has a bit of a long question, so I'm going to summarize it, and I hope I'm doing it justice, Jilly. But essentially, Jilly has some fiction that she is self-publishing, and she's publishing it everywhere. And one of those places is at IngramSpark. And so she wants to know, what is ALLi's recommended pricing strategy for IngramSpark books for full-length fiction? Because she doesn't want to charge too little, but she doesn't want to charge so much that it prices herself out of the market just with the printing costs. What do you think, Orna?
Well, it's a challenge with print on demand. There's no doubt about it. So if a book is mass produced by consignment printing, then you get a cheaper cost per book and you get your profit. Now, a lot more people, if you're going through a bookstore sort of arrangement, a lot more people are taking a cut out of that payment, so that when you come along as with a POD book, the production costs are higher because the book is printed as a single book. It's not printed, you don't have thousands in your garage kind of gathering mold, so you're paying for that privilege. And so this is a challenge that comes up for authors a lot. How can I kind of be competitive? Well, the straight answer is, dollar for dollar, you can't be. It's not possible really to do POD and compete with huge corporations that have massive economies of scale. You just can't compete at that level. The question is, do you need to? And of course, fiction is highly competitive, particularly in genre area. Print fiction is very competitive. The thing is, you need to work out what is your strategy with IngramSpark. Why are you there? If you're just there because you want to provide a print book, should your readers want one, then just be there. Don't worry about trying to be competitive. Just make sure that you get a royalty that keeps you happy if somebody does buy. So what a lot of our members do is add $2 on to whatever the price that Ingram comes up with, and that's your price. And no, it won't be competitive, but if somebody really wants your print book, then they will pay that. And you focus on your ebooks and your audiobooks, where your share is much more significant, and they're easier for you to sell and so on. So print is sort of like a number 3 format for indie authors, whereas in the traditional way of doing things, it was the number 1 format, and then along came ebooks, and then along came audiobooks, which used to be outsourced and now are not so much. So yeah, that would be it really. Add $2 on, or £2, or whatever makes you comfortable. Add £4 if you want to, add less if you prefer, and don't think too much about the pricing.
All right. Next question comes from Richard, and Richard is early in his self-publishing journey, it sounds like. And he says, I've heard that authors who are self-publishing should create their own publishing imprint. Is this sound advice, and can you address some of the advantages or disadvantages for doing so?
Okay, I know you have some thoughts on this too. So you don't need to. It's fine if you just want to be yourself and go out there. You don't have to do this, but a lot of authors like to do it. It's a publishing tradition. So in traditional publishing, it was used to separate out different imprints within one publishing house. So their fiction imprint would have one name and their nonfiction another, or their chick lit would have one, their literary fiction would have another, whatever. It kind of, people within the business, but not readers. Readers don't notice this at all, but people within the business would know that there's a difference, say, between a Viking book and a Pan Macmillan book, and what those differences are. But as far as readers are concerned, they don't even see most of that stuff. For the reader, the author is the brand. And so it's not important that you do this. Unless, again, depending, if you have a strategy where you're trying to break in at a traditional level and you're trying to, maybe go down the literary fiction route, nomination for prizes and all that kind of thing, people say that it may have a slight advantage. I personally don't really believe that it does. I think people understand that it is a self-published book, and the idea that, putting it under an imprint in some way removes that stigma, if it's a stigma for somebody, or, removes that benefit if somebody considers it a benefit. I think people see through it very easily and know to look for that. So it's really down to you. Do you want to have an imprint? There are no great advantages. It doesn't have a legal standing. It's not your company name. It doesn't make any difference to anybody else, really, whether it is there or not. I have one because it has personal meaning for me. It has a kind of metaphorical meaning that kind of I like, and that's why I have it. But there really aren't any great advantages or disadvantages, would be my opinion. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah. And I think we have to distinguish as well between an imprint and like a publishing entity. So like you can start a publishing entity like a sole proprietorship or sole trader or an LLC. An imprint would be a division within that, is what we're trying to say. So like for me, I have a sole proprietorship, and then I'm converting into an LLC next year. So if I wanted to, I could have one imprint for my writing books and then have another imprint for my fiction. But to Orna's point, it really doesn't make any sense, because at the end of the day, from a tax perspective, you're still going to publish. It's all going to come to the same place. So if you're going to do that, I think branding is everything. Making sure that you've got a very clear brand on what your imprints are. But if you're just a self-publisher, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, unless you're writing a crap ton of books.
Yeah, and the thing is that on Amazon and most of the online retailers, it's the author name is the significant thing. So you might want to change your author name and have a different author name for. I know you do that, Michael.
Yep.
I just started doing that this year. I'm Orna A. Ross now for nonfiction and Orna Ross for fiction and poetry, because the online retailers do distinguish between, but they, the piece of metadata that they look at is not the imprint name. It is the author name. And so that, if I was going to kind of be thinking about something, that's the one I will be thinking about if you write across multiple genre. And then, as Michael says, the important thing to realize is that your publishing entity, your LLC, your private company, your sole trader, your partnership, whatever your actual financial governmental entity, that does have legal standing. And the second you sell a book, an ebook, the smallest ebook on an online retailer, you are in business and you are obliged to have an actual business entity. So that's a different thing to the imprint. So hopefully we've helped and not muddled you more.
Yep. And I would also throw in there, I would not recommend starting a separate business entity for a separate publishing endeavor. So I would do 2 pen names. I would not do 2 LLCs.
You'd drown in complexity.
It would just go crazy with taxes too. It's not fun. So, okay. Next question is from Becky. And Becky says that I uploaded a ebook to IngramSpark, but am not happy with how I turned out. Can I unpublish it, publish the ebook through KDP Select, and still distribute the paperback through Ingram?
Unfortunately, it's very difficult to do that. So choosing your ebook publisher is a really important decision at the beginning, and then different suppliers are different in terms of their flexibility around how you kind of get, it's easy always to get into the arrangement. It's not always easy to get out of it. So yeah, we would recommend always going direct to Amazon, whether select or not, that Amazon does what it does so very well, and it's a retailer as well as the actual KDP itself. It's all there in one platform, and that platform the publishing platform serves the retailer so very well. You will do much better going directly through Amazon than coming in through any other aggregator, IngramSpark included. You also will lose royalties by going through an aggregator every time that you do that. And, for Amazon in particular, that doesn't make a lot of sense when they make it so easy to just go direct. So yeah, going direct. You could ask Ingram if they, if they will kind of release you from your ebook distributorship. They may or may not. It may be a lesson to chalk up for the next book.
All right. Next question comes from Alex. And Alex said that he just joined ALLi, so welcome, Alex. And he just published his first self-published novel, where it has been favorably received, but looking for some ways to grow and expand the readership. So the question is, what are some easy wins, some quick, easy wins that I can make in promoting my book, since I don't have a lot of time to promote?
Okay. If you don't have time, it would help if you have money. If you don't have either, then things get tricky. So what you're talking about really is marketing. And without knowing what you're doing already, it's very hard to give advice off the top of the head. So I think Michael will come up with, some good, short, sharp tips. I would like to just talk about the kind of marketing that goes on behind the scenes, really, so that setting yourself up for what I call access marketing, whereby you attract your readers, you captivate them, you send them regular communications, you build an email list from that by giving, creating a reader magnet, all of that. If you haven't got that in place, I consider that to be sort of marketing ground zero. You do that first of all. Absolutely make sure that your book is on genre, and that it does fit in cover-wise, and the language that you're using, the book description. So these are all the things that you have to get right first of all before you do anything else. I'm assuming that because, as you say, it's been received pretty well, I'm assuming that you've got that right. But maybe you haven't, because a book can be praised but actually not sell because it's not quite right in terms of titling and the look and feel of the actual book. So again, the thing that you would need to make sure is, who are your comparable authors? Who do you compare to? Who do you want? If somebody has bought somebody else's book, whose lists do you want to turn up on the retail stores, in the also boughts? You should understand who your comparable authors are and what your unique kind of selling proposition is in comparison to them. So that's the basic sort of marketing stuff that I think everybody needs to have in place, first of all. Then when you've got that in place, Michael, do you want to give some of your very good tips from your...
Yeah, so another wrinkle with Richard's question is that he says he doesn't have time to set up a website or maintain it. And Richard, I have to push back on you a little bit on this. I think that that's probably one of the easiest quick wins that you could make, is to set up a website, even if it's like a one-page website, because otherwise people are going to look up your name and then they're not going to see anything. and then they're not going to know where to go or where to buy it. So even if you just had like a splash page on WordPress that said, "Hi, my name is Richard, and here's my book. Here's a link to it. Put the cover." That's, to me, probably the quickest win that you can make. It's very difficult to have an author career without a website these days.
Absolutely. And also your website's your opportunity to guide the reader and into how you want them to think. It's really no author, saying you don't have time. If you've got time to write a book, you've got time to create a website that works for you. It's so essential. I forgot to mention it.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it in an hour. I mean, you can literally go to do some research, figure out which website provider is the best for you. Download a cheap or a free WordPress theme. You can get that right from your website provider. Install it. There's plenty of YouTube videos on there how to do that. It's not hard. And then design how you want it to look. I mean, WordPress is really easy to use. I think, to me, that's a really quick win. And also considering selling direct, I think, is another quick win. It's something that a lot of people don't do. It's something I did it early in my career, and then I stopped. And then I did it again, and I wish I had done it all along. I think that's a quick win. I think just finding ways to make it easy for people to find the book and get it if they want it is the easiest thing. So distribution, where are you distributing the book? Draft to digital, use some aggregators to get into places that you can't get to before. I think that is smart. But I also think, if you don't have a whole lot of time, I think Amazon ads is also a pretty smart strategy. The learning curve is tough in the beginning, and you are going to have to spend some time. But once you figure it out, then you don't have to spend very much time at all on them. They can just kind of maintain themselves, and you can, Brian Cohen has a great course on it. There's other people that have great courses that has worked very well for me as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a more fundamental issue in the question, in sort of the mindset that wrote the question, and it's a mindset that we see a lot in the author community. And essentially, what you are saying there, Richard, is that you don't want to be a publisher. If you don't have time to be a publisher, you are a self-publisher who is not putting in the time to actually publish. So you're still thinking like a writer, which is completely understandable, and which most of us do as we start off. But when you self-publish your own books, it's there in the term. You are a publisher now, and you need to become a competent one. If not a brilliant one, you need to do the basics. So they are some of the basics. Do look at Michael's book, 150 Questions, as well, because there's a whole marketing section there where short, sharp, punchy. There are promotional sites you can use, for example, where, again, if you have some money to spend, you can get some traction. You can apply for a BookBub deal is something that gives a lot of people a whoosh up. And if you have a strategy around that, you can actually, for not a huge amount of time, really get yourself a lot more readers very quickly. But the real thing with marketing and with all aspects of publishing is it's slow, it's steady, and it's consistent. So you need to do something every week. Or Michael, I know you have a thing, I do, to do something every day to help your book along, to get your book out there, so that it won't sell if people don't know that it's there. And it's your job as a publisher to make sure that they do.
All right. Next question. I know this question is going to be after your heart, Orna. This comes from Matthew, and Matthew asks, what is the best way to distribute a poetry and art book to the widest audience possible?
It's no different to any other book, and this is the thing. This is the first thing to address. I think poets think that their genre is different, and when it comes to self-publishing, it actually isn't. It's the same. You need to do all of the things that we just spoke about there a moment ago in terms of understanding who poetry is. What we call one of the macro genres. So it is like fiction and nonfiction, and poetry are the three macro genres that then break down into subgenre within. So you need to understand what subgenre are you in as a poet, and how are your readers best reached, and who are your comparable poets, and all the things that we just spoke about a few moments ago, having your own website, building up your own email. All of these things are really important. And the good thing to say is that a lot of poets are not publishing well. So it's actually still at this, at this point in time, it is probably easier to get attention as a self-publishing poet than it is as a self-publishing novelist or nonfiction writer now. The field is there are lots and lots of poets writing, but they're not publishing well. So the books, they put them together and put them out there, but they don't actually put any marketing behind them. So you market a poetry book just the same way as you market a fiction book and a nonfiction book.
And you're so right about that, Orna. I have 2 poetry collections that I'm actually advertising right now. I'm finding some success on Amazon ads, ironically. I see. It sounds like I'm all in on Amazon. I'm not, I promise, but I am focusing on Amazon ads right now. And what I've noticed about poetry, and you talk about publishing well, you're so right, because even the traditional publishers right now that are publishing a lot of poetry are trying to imitate self-published covers, but the covers don't look very good. I mean, they look awful. I mean, they look like somebody did them in Photoshop. They're very lo-fi. And I happened to click on one book the other day, and it was by some really big publisher in the poetry space. And I was like, really? So the bar is very, very low right now. So it's kind of your opportunity to choose your own destiny. I think branding is really important. So if you can develop a strong brand that's consistent from book to book, and write really good poems too, that's important. But a strong brand, I think you can really write your own ticket.
I agree, and there are certain genre in poetry that is doing extremely well. So all the motivational, spiritual kind of stuff, love poetry, perennially popular. There's also a real huge market for sort of suffering poetry, for want of a better word, pain and angst, which is where most of us start writing poetry as teenagers, in that place where we're brokenhearted. So all of that is there, and if you could get a cohesive, as Michael says, brand where the look of your book reflects the words and you understand, it's the very same as a novel or a nonfiction book. You need to understand what is your value to the reader. What is the reader? What kind of experience is the reader getting from your poems? Because, one poem is very unlike another, and just not all poetry readers are the same. So poetry isn't this thing that, exists in one loop. You really have to break it down into niche and micro niche and think about the value in the same way.
And I'll give a shameless plug. So I wrote a book 5 years ago that predicted all of this that's happening right now with poetry. It's called Indie Poet Rockstar. And I wrote it 5 years ago, but it's still relevant today. You can check that out. It's got some strategies that I think poets can follow. I think poetry right now is where self-publishing fiction was in 2012.
I completely agree with you.
That gives you an idea.
Yeah, I second that. And we weren't talking about this before we came on or anything like that. In fact, I'm going to tell you, Michael, something that you may not know, which is that book brought you to my attention.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the book, because nobody was talking about self-publishing poetry back then except you.
Yeah, I was the only one. The only one. And everything I don't want to toot my own horn, but almost everything that I said would happen in that book is happening now.
Absolutely.
So it's happened a little slower than I thought, but
it happened slower, which is very interesting, I think, and there are reasons for that, which we don't have time to go into here. But allow me to toot your horn and tell anybody, any poet who is thinking about self-publishing or already engaged in self-publishing, to buy the book. It's well worth the read.
All right. Well, thank you. And all right, next question here is from Tunde. I hope I'm saying that correctly. ALLi asked, it's another poetry question. Can ALLi review or assess my poetry collection?
No, that's not what we do. But we do have a directory of partner members who work with poets. And I did a recent podcast. I think it's 2 episodes ago. If you listen to the self-publishing advice podcast, John, whose second name escapes me now for a moment, and I know him as well as I know you, Michael, but me and names. John is an editor who actually does that, and he does that on the podcast, and he's available to do that sort of assessment, as are many other editors and book coaches and poetry coaches and so on. ALLi doesn't do anything like that. We are an association of self-publishing writers, so it's quite a different brief.
All right. Oh, and we have some comments here. Andy, this goes back to the imprint question, says that one advantage or perceived advantage of an imprint, I presume, is the brand in the feed. So a good example of this is the Folio Society. The brand conveys a certain level of quality both to readers and retailers, which, good point. I agree with that.
Yes, that is true, but I'm not sure that an author can get that sort of branding with their imprint. I think it will be the author name that carries the branding. Yep.
And Scott Weaver also says, we were talking about websites, says that Brizzy Cloud, that's BRZY, is easier and cheaper than WordPress. So I've never heard of that, but thanks for recommending it.
Nor have I. And this is the thing, there are so many services
there
now.
Are. Brizzy Cloud, Wix, WordPress, Squarespace. Yeah, you pick your poison, really.
Absolutely. So, but if you don't know, if you're not interested in doing all that research, WordPress is great. I can highly recommend it, and it's straightforward and has a lot of authors use it and have been very happy with it. So yeah,
agree. All right. So next question, to get a few more in. Deborah asks, is it possible to format my book using an iPad Pro? I can take this one if you want.
Please do, yeah.
I'm not familiar with any ways to format your book using an iPad. I've heard of people doing a lot of things on their iPads. That is not one of them. That said, I could be wrong. And if folks in the comments know, let us know. If you're listening to this after the fact, drop us an email, let us know. I just don't think it's there yet. Even if you could, I don't know that you would get the level of quality that you wanted.
Yeah. It seems like a desktop job. What about Scrivener on iPad? I've never used it for that, but I'm just wondering, is it possible to?
You can't. It does have a compile feature. Now that I think about it, it's very stripped down and streamlined.
Yeah.
You would probably. I don't know if Ulysses, because Ulysses is a competitor to Script. You might have a better. I don't know if they would allow you to use the different styles and stuff that they have. You may try to check that out, but that comes with a learning curve too. Ulysses compile is not. It's not for the faint of heart. So I don't know of any easy way to do it.
Yeah, I do think it's a desktop job, really. Even in terms of the size of the screen to work with, and so if you can, I think grab yourself a desktop somewhere just for your formatting.
Yeah. And if you can't, then maybe you can hire someone to do it for you. And check our ALLi services rating directory, selfpublishingadvice.org/ratings to find a good formatter. Okay. Kermit asks, this is a very timely question. KDP rejected my book for referring to COVID-19. What can I do? So Kermit has a book. It's hard to know what's in the book, Kermit, so I certainly apologize. But there was something in the book that flagged it. It was either in the metadata or the book itself that they flagged it. And, he was just trying to write a book that, utilized COVID-19 as a. I don't know if it's for the marketing or if it was actually for something related to it, but have you seen this, Orna?
It's not something I've come across. What I would say, and there are a lot of books out there already. I mean, I think the first COVID book was out nearly before people knew about COVID around the world. Before the first lockdown happened, almost, we were seeing COVID books and pandemic books appearing by the new times. So certainly it's in and of itself, having that as a topic or in the description, I don't believe is an actual stopper. But what I think, and I could be wrong about that, I haven't looked at it in detail as to whether it is an actual stopper, but it seems to me it will be something in the specific way in which you used it. The thing to do with anything like this with KDP is to realize that it has been flagged by a bot. It's been flagged by a machine. So there is very possibly a way around it. So I'm not sure, but your first point of reference would be to write to them and ask exactly why it was stopped, and ask for an investigation, ask for them to look and say, explain why it happened, and say that you don't believe it should have happened, and explain why, and you may well get satisfaction straight away from that. Often things are flagged by the machine that are then let through by a human person in KDP. So your first stop for KDP always is the support desk. If you run into further trouble, and if you feel that this isn't right, and you're a member of the Alliance of Independent Authors, drop us a line and we'll take it up on your behalf once you've gone through the first point of call and not had satisfaction. But you possibly, probably, I would hopefully say, would be would find that they would clear it for you.
Yep. Now I've seen a number of COVID-19 books that were flagged because of some other reasons. There are some folks out there that are doing a little bit more dubious stuff. Yeah. So you want to make sure you're not in that group. Make sure that, or you don't give the perception of that. Maybe there's a few things that you could fix on your end, but just persistence, and certainly drop us a line if you need some help. All right. Next question is from Linda. And Linda asks, where can I find print book templates for formatting my book? I'm trying to format a book and just want some help with some of the headers and footers.
I'm assuming you're formatting in Word from the question, and the person we always recommend for print templates is our advisor, Joel Friedlander. He has lots of good templates on his website, thebookdesigner.com. If it's Word that you're after, which I presume it is.
Yep. His templates are fantastic. Derek Murphy also had some templates at one point. I'm not sure if he still sells them, but those were really good too. All right. Next question is from Ralph, and Ralph says, help. I'm unhappy with how my publisher has handled books 1 through 2 in my trilogy. What are my options, and can I find a new publisher?
Well, we're all about self-publishing here. So we would say, publish yourself, and then you'll be happy with your publisher, hopefully, once you've become a good publisher yourself. So if you're not happy with books 1 and 2, it very, very much depends on your contract, your reversion clause, and your ability to take your book back. And that will be in your publishing contract if you had a contract, which hopefully you had, and if you had a good reversion clause, which hopefully you do have. I will say that a lot of traditional publishing reversion clauses are not good. Not pro-author. So you may find that you have to, engage in a conversation. But the first thing to do would be tell them you're not happy, tell them why you're not happy, ask them for, tell them that you want your rights back. It may be simple. If the book is not selling at all, it becomes very simple, because they don't particularly want to hold the property under those conditions, and you want it back, and then that's easy. If the book is selling, then they're going to be more reluctant to give it back to you. And if your difference with them is creative, you don't like the cover or something like that, there's not a lot you can do if the contract doesn't allow for reversion within the time period of the contract. So much depends on the contract, and without seeing it, we can't really advise any further. If you are an ALLi member, you can send the contract in to our help desk, and we can analyze it for you and tell you what your options are.
All right. And final question here. This is a pretty easy one, Orna. Brian asks, if I use a Bowker or Nielsen ISBN, do I forfeit the 70% Amazon sales commission?
No, No, definitely not. So you need our book. We've just done a little, Debbie has put together a fantastic guide. Debbie Young has put together a fantastic guide to ISBNs, which again, if you're a member, you can download free in the member zone. You can also see the blog, the associated blog post, which it gives an awful lot of information as well. And the ultimate guide to ISBNs, if you just Google that, you'll see our post on it. But essentially, very quickly, just to say, the ISBN that you purchase makes you the publisher of record and allows you to publish on KDP and everywhere else and be paid for your work. So we recommend that you do own your ISBNs, and you don't get to choose between Bowker or Nielsen. It's decided for you by the country that you live in. You actually, if you're in the US, you must get it through Bowker. If you're in the UK, you must get it through Nielsen. So yeah, have a look. You need to know a bit more about ISBNs, and so you can understand a little bit better how they work.
Yes, and I lied. We'll get one final question in because it's an easy one. This comes from Francois, and he asked how to promote your book on a budget online. So we kind of answered this one already. I did realize we have an old episode. It's actually an old episode of this show with myself and Dan Blank. So we're going back a little bit here, but we actually did a theme around this show, around this question. So you might find this helpful. I'll put it in the show notes, as I find that probably a lot of people would find it helpful as well. So we did a whole episode on marketing on a budget. So folks might find that helpful.
I'm sure they will. There was loads of very good evergreen advice in there. And again, there's lots of very good advice in Michael's own marketing books and in 150 Questions Answered. So, do take a look in there. It's one of the things that you do very well, Michael, is always keeping the consciousness of the budget in the back of your mind, because there's so much marketing advice that just assumes authors have big budgets, and very, very few authors do, especially at the beginning. So yeah. Okay, so we pop that in the show notes, and that is it, I think, for 2020. Do keep your questions coming in. It really helps. Even if you ask privately and then you want to submit it here for public discussion, it really helps other authors. Every time we answer a question here, it reaches so many more people than just the individual who has that question. So thank you all so much for sending your questions through.
And Orna, can I say something?
Yes, please.
We have a little bit of a backlog. So I know that there are some folks who have sent in a lot of questions and haven't gotten a response yet. So what I'm promising right now is that if you sent your question in before December 13th, then you will get a personal response from me. I'm going to go through all the questions we have left through the end of the year, and then I'm going to write you a personal response that'll come through all of us. So we're still going to answer the question on the air, but just to make sure that your question doesn't get lost and we can start 2020 or 2021 with a clean slate, we'll make sure everybody gets answers to their questions by the end of the year. All right.
That's fantastic. And thank you for doing that, Michael. That's brilliant. And do people understand that you can privately get an answer to your question by writing directly to info@allianceindependentauthors.org anytime if you're an ALLi member. You write direct. This is not the only way. You also, of course, can join the forum and put your question out to all the other members on the forum. Very active, very dynamic Facebook forum, where you'll get not just, ALLi's ideas, because some questions have more than one answer, and the wisdom of the hive mind and all the different responses you get on the forum can be really useful as well. So, lots of ways to get your questions answered if you're an ALLi member. All right, then. So thank you. As I was saying, thank you very much for sending your questions in. It really helps us to help other people. And yes, happy writing and happy publishing over the holiday season. And we'll see you again early in 2021 for another ALLi member Q&A. Take care now.
Happy holidays, everyone. Take care.